Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're actually talking about a compare and contrast of two different things that were going on at the same time. So, in front of us, we have two weapons of World War II that we will be comparing. Take my notes aside.
Before we get too far in the video, I want to talk about the relationship I have with these two firearms. So, this was my first pistol purchase. I believe I paid $300 for it back in 2015? No. Whenever I turned 21, this was my first pistol purchase, and this was my concealed carry for a long time. Because, well, in my open carry, like a dork, I carried it in this, but this was like my go-to car gun, because it's light, it's slim for what it is. It's slim and it's a nice little gun. But I paid $300 for this when I first purchased it, and I do not regret it ever since then. Let me put all this back together. This is my father's 1911. Us kids bought him this as a Christmas present a couple years back. I bought the grips, and my brother got him the gun itself, and I bought some parts for it. It's gonna get a complete. It may be a Rock Island on the outside, but here in the next couple months, it will be all the internal components will be a Wilson Combat rebuild. So if you like that, keep that in mind as we continue down the channel.
So we have let's show empty. We have the infamous Walther P38, and this thing is beautiful. This is one of my favorite firearms to shoot. It's very comfortable, and it's a good dot poker. Accuracy is a little unreliable after 50 yards, but within that 50-yard range, you can pin a quarter without an issue. Second one we have is the equally infamous Colt 1911. Now, this was, full disclosure, this one's made by Rock Island Armory. This one is not a factory Colt, but Rock Island Armory did make Colts during World War II and World War I for the war effort. So it'll give us a decent comparison. So first, we're going to start off the history with the two. We have the oldest one here. We'll start with that one. Designed in 1910 and then issued out in 1911, and then it reached the civilian market in 1912. After that, it's seen military service from 1911 all the way to about 1986 is when it was replaced by the M9 Beretta. And the reason it was designed was it was after experiencing some stuff going on in the Spanish-American War. The American military figured they needed a gun with a better cartridge and something that was a little bit more modern than just a revolver. So John Moses Browning came up with this design, and a lot of people still use it to this day. I know for a fact my dad would still carry this thing when he's got something that he can cover over it, because of course it's long, it's heavy. It's still a very popular concealed carry firearm, and from both people in my age group and older boomers alike. Actually, I joke on one episode that I call this the boomer special, because God forbid you try to tell anybody older than maybe 50 years old that the 1911 is outdated. So, and in many aspects, it's been outdated for a long, like mechanically outdated for a long time. But it's just such a sexy firearm. Like, you can see, like, this it's sleek. It's got very little catch marks. It's got very little. It's pleasing to the eye, which is probably why it's still made today. But I digress. Oh, last thing on the history of it. Some special forces units still use the 1911. I believe the Marine Recon unit still does. So it still sees some military service today. Now let's move over to the Walther. So the Walther P38 was designed as you would suspect in 1938, and it saw military action in the mid 40s. It was a little late to World War II, but the Germans were looking for something that was cheaper and more reliable than the P08 that they were issuing. Um, and the P08 is a great weapon. It's got a funky mechanism to where it has almost like an elbow type extractor that causes mechanical problems. And I personally shot a Luger many years ago, and uh, when you get to the lower ends of the magazine, you start having some mechanical issues, and it is because of that little arm ejector or extractor. So let's step forward to the design aspect of this. Now, the history of it is everybody knows what happened. Germans lost the war in 1945. They stopped making these. Well, in 1963, actually, Walther started remaking them again because they were starting to. There was a need for a police model. There was a need for the new German military was coming back online, and they needed a service weapon. And a lot of the old guard essentially loved the P38 because it has a lot of modern features it has a lot of features that you would see on modern firearms. For example, the safety that is a decocker. That this was new at the time, um, very new. The the breech, as you can see, I don't know if you can see here, but the slide mechanism would be very reminiscent of that of the Beretta M9. Um, the the ejector down here, I like it personally. I think it's more efficient than the mag release up here, just because your palm's already here, and if you put if you put your palm on here, you pull down, and if you just practice like that, you can sometimes be more swift than with the button release of a Colt. But we're getting sidetracked. So this is actually this version is technically a P1 because that's what was manufactured after the war. They still sold them as P38s because, as you can see, it still says Walther P38 on the slide. They didn't like label them P1s, but you can tell a P1 versus a true P38 because of this one has an anodized aluminum slot or aluminum frame with a steel slide. Most of your World War II issued P38s would have been steel framed, and I cannot. I'm going to favor this gun during this, and I'm just go outright saying I have had zero issues with this gun. No jams, no firearms, no hang fires, no nothing. But that can also be because of the how wide the extractor port is. Like, you're not going to get anything stuck in there. Something else this firearm offered was the round indicator. I don't know if you can see on camera, but there is a little lever right here that goes up and down as the round is in there. So it was one of the first firearms to have a form of a round indicator that almost every firearm does. Every firearm now has. And with that said, let's start taking them apart because I think if we're gonna analyze these, we need to understand in a battle situation or um, in a they need to understand that in a battle situation, they need to be able to take them apart and field strip them relatively easy. So we'll start with everybody's favorite, the Colt. Um, it's anybody that's held one knows this is a pain in the ass. So first, you take your safety off. You need to pull this to the side like this to where that gets caught like that. And then you can twist it. Once you twist it counterclockwise. If the gun's facing at you like this, it's counterclockwise like so. So you do that, and then you can bring the slide back. And once you bring the slide back, you bring it to this point here, where there's the second little notch. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera or not, but there's a second little notch here, not the first one, but the second one, that allows you to push from the other side. You'll see there's a little button right here. Well, it's not a button, it's the thing. It allows you to push this ever so freaking complicatedly. And this could just be because it's a rock island. I know a lot of people have given this gun crap for this, but there it goes. Okay, so it was just hard to do it doing it like this. So you pull this out, and now your whole mag assembly should be able to slide forward. And now you can field strip, or you've got your slide that you can easily clean, and you have your recoil spring out, and now you can take the rest of this key piece here and you just twist this out. So now you got that, and then you have your barrel and your slide. To a conscript, just throwing the gun in their hand situation, that can be a little tedious. But to somebody like us, gun folks who have been in the gun culture, knows that it could be a lot worse. I've certainly taken apart guns with a lot more complicated thing. But if you're not used to it, it's very difficult. This is where I have to give points to the Walther. So we'll slide all this over. Sorry. And we'll get to the magazines in a minute. The Walther is such a modern design. Anybody that has a SIG or a Beretta or a Smith & Wesson knows this system, knows how to take this gun apart. So it's very simple. You take it off safety. You pull this back, lock that back, pull that down, bring that forward, and release the hammer. That's its part. And then you can separate the slide from the barrel just as easy. So just by looking at the table here, you can see all kinds of little moving parts. There's all kinds of little parts on the 1911 that you have to keep track of. And especially if you're in a foxhole or in some kind of a camp where you're not in a fixed, safe position. Like I'm lucky I got a table in front of me. If you don't have a table in front of you, it's very easy to lose some of these parts. Whereas this thing, this is field stripped right here. I do want to take a moment and look at the Walther P38 design. You can see where it's got. Anybody that knows anything about the Beretta, which might do a video on that next, not sure. This has two recoil springs here instead of the one that we would later see on the Beretta, which neither here nor there. It's one extra. It's just extra little moving parts. But again, for being designed in the 30s and fielded in the 40s, was ahead of its time. Everything in here is beautiful. In my opinion, it's mechanical, it's beautiful, it's sound. And as you can see, this particular gun has seen a lot. I've put probably 200 rounds through it, and I'd hate to think how many rounds have been through it before, because you can see the anodizing on the slide is fading off. So yeah, I'd like to deep dive on this particular serial number and see where it's been, what it's done, and such. So now for reassembly, we'll work back to front. So for the reassembly, you have to make sure that this little lever here comes down. And so this is essentially the whole recoil system of the Walther. This is what the recoil brings the slide back. The slide allows this little, it locks this back in place so this doesn't travel back with it, but it gives it enough pressure to help bring the to bring the slide back and bring the round forward and then lock it into place. It's a very early version of the delayed blowback that we now know and love today. So we again, as I was saying, you pull that you push this up. I'm sorry, you push this up using the piston itself, and you slide that in. Stupid simple. And then making sure that this stays flat and locked in, because you don't want this to go anywhere. You bring that forward. And you got to make sure, so when you're doing this, you do have to make sure that you keep this level, because otherwise these little pieces in here, if anybody that's taking a gun apart should know this, but it's worth reiterating. These parts do not stay fixed down, so if you keep your gun level, you will be able to do that. So that goes on, and you bring the slide back ever so much, and now you're ready for combat. 1911, we essentially just rewind what we just did. I always have an issue with this, so this is going to be fun. Take the barrel, we put it in, lock it back, make sure it's locked all the way back. That'll be an important feature later. Take this, you want to put that in just so that way you don't lose it, because that is something I lost when I first took this apart. And yeah, that's no fun. And then you take your recoil spring here, you slide it in ever so nicely, and it sits right on where the nut is here, that allows the barrel to be fixed, but just a little bit canter when the slide comes back. Put this on. Oh, should probably do this first. So again, you've got to make sure this thing likes to move down here. So you want to make sure that when you stick this through here, you're sticking it in and you got the hole right there. And it's important too, as you're putting it together, that your thumb is here. I know some people might not do it, but I had an issue where I would bring the slide too far back and it would make things misaligned. So once you have that there, you bring it around, and you can put this in here. And once you realize, okay, so you got it. This is where I tell you need to check that, because many times when I put this together, practicing for this video, I missed the hole. Story of my life. You bring this back, and again, you have to find that little hole there to push all this back in, like so. There it goes. So with that in, you slide it back forward, and here's a good gauge guess as to whether you have successfully put this in correctly. There's no gap here. A couple times when I first put this in, there was a gap here. So good thing to look out for when you're reassembling your 1911. And then you take your spring button, spring tensioner. I don't know what you want to call it. I'm sure there's a technical term for it. I just couldn't find it. And then you take your barrel nut and you bring it down and you just lock it back in. All right, and there you go. Your 1911 is back together. So let me know in the comment section which one you think was easier to assemble, and which one is actually, tell me your favorite between the two of them, and give me the reason why. Between these two, as much as I like the 45 round, which we'll talk about that in a minute, as much as I love the 45 round and the feel of the 1911, I'm a mechanical guy. I like them. If things make mechanical sense to me, I'm gonna like it more. This I like more. This makes more sense on a battlefield. This is lighter. You can actually feel the differences. I believe this is a 5 pounder, 4 pounder. This is less than 3, and you can thank a lot of that to the aluminum slide. Now, if I had a um, actual World War II issued P38, I'm sure this would probably be way about the same as this, because this is steel framed, this is aluminum framed. And I've heard a lot of FUDs, and I will call you guys FUDs who say this. So I've heard a lot of FUDs that shit on the aluminum framed firearm, saying, "Oh, after you beat it, that aluminum's gonna break." That's not true. This gun right here is a perfect example. I've myself put 200 rounds through this thing. Um, Never had an issue with it, and the gun is over 50 years old. 60. Let's see, this particular, I do know this particular firearm was manufactured and sold in 1965. So however many years there are between 65 and 2024 is how long this gun has been used and abused and shot. And this aluminum frame shows no signs of deterioration or cracking or fracturing. So yes, the aluminum frame is a good weapon, actually. So a lot of companies are still using it. I do believe Walther did make a new metal frame for their P99 lookalikes nowadays, whatever they're called. I don't keep up too much with Walther. I've always considered Walther kind of like one of those Gucci guns that I'll never be able to afford, nor do I want to. Not my thing. Y'all can do what you want. I do what I do. But I do, for mechanical reasons, I have to give my opinion and my choice to this one. Now, with that said, let's talk about the magazines. So the magazines are pretty similar. As you can expect, there is no mag release like there would be on the 1911 on the P38, because the mag release or the mag catch is down here, which you can see notable wear marks. And the magazine itself will actually be, if the magazine was made prior or after 1963, it will say on their P1 9mm Walther, with the little Walther flag on there. But you'll notice they're very similar. But again, it's the technology of the time. They're both 8 rounds. One shoots 45. Obviously, you can see the size difference here, and that's where I have to give points to the 1911. 1911 is chambered in 45. However, fun little tidbit: they did make one of these in 45, and they are rare to find because they were prototyped for the U.S. military, because they thought about maybe adopting it as a new service weapon because of what they found and what they saw of the mechanics of it in during World War II. However, if you find one of those, it is a rarity. I believe only 8 were made, because it was solely for field testing and prototyping. I don't believe very many of them were made, and I'll let you guys know in the comments if I find anything else on that, because if I could find one of these in 45, I would daily carry this. Anyway, getting back to the magazines. Obviously 2 different sizes, but they're both stamped sheet metal. They're both riveted in some areas. I don't think this one is. I know this one's actually, you can actually see the rivets in it. Which I think is kind of cool. This one is just I think this one's just stamped and folded. So once again, thank you guys for watching. I know this video was a little shorter and a little less in depth than I wanted to go, just because these 2 guns are very similar. They both are. You can guarantee their accuracy, both at only about 50 yards. They both hold 8 rounds. the technology difference between the two is kind of the differential, because like this was designed in 1911, 1912, and then redesigned in 1924. This one was designed and pretty much perfected in 1930, 1938. It had little minor adjustments as time went on. Like the P1 came out, then there was a P4 version of it. There was a Swiss version that came out, but very little mechanical differences. All in all, like I've said before, I've said during the video, I give props to the P38, and I'm not a big fan of 9mm. You all know this. This is purely for a mechanical purpose and ease of assembly, and just because this gun was so significant to the history of firearms design. Like almost um, every firearm afterwards after this gun came out would adopt something that would be similar to this, and a lot of it was already playing on what they did with the PPK in the 20s. But it's just, to me, that's cool. That is nifty. And I grew up in the 60s. Well, I didn't grow up in the 60s. I grew up watching The Man from Uncle in the 60s, and they had cool variations of this gun in that show. So yeah, again, thank you for watching. Um, if you want to sponsor the channel, please like and subscribe. I hear a rumor here soon we might have some merch coming out. Maybe, just a rumor. So we'll have some hats, we'll have some t-shirts coming out soon, and as always, watch your six, keep your head on a swivel, and train. None of this is good, and doesn't matter if this is your favorite or if this is your favorite if you don't train with it and get prolific with it. That is where our sponsors at USCCA come in. There will be a link down in the description where you can read a free pamphlet from them about the 6 ways to interact with the police after you've been involved with a shooting. Again, thank you, everybody.